All right, everybody, welcome back into Sports and Money. Thank you so much for being with us today. Hope you're doing well wherever you're watching us from. Really appreciate you tuning into the video with us today. We're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Le'Veon Bell negotiations. I want to talk about, first of all, why Le'Veon Bell should insist on a long-term contract with the Steelers. Then I'm going to turn right back around and argue that the Pittsburgh Steelers should almost under no conditions give him that long-term contract, except maybe under one condition. We'll look at that in a minute. At the end, I'm looking at who's got the contract leverage and who's really got the most pull right here. I don't usually try to argue both sides of the coin in the same video, but today we're going to do just that. Let's start with Le'Veon Bell. Here's the reasons why he should absolutely insist on a new long-term contract, and by long-term I mean 3, 4, or 5 seasons with high money. Why he shouldn't be playing for the Steelers until he gets that. If I were his agent, I would tell him, don't play another down for the Steelers until they come up with this money. First of all, the production. He has produced at a high level for 4 seasons now. He has been playing tremendously well. If he were to keep this up, and listen, projections like this are always dangerous. If he were to keep this up for a very long time, you could argue that he should be in the Hall of Fame. He's that good. He's playing that well. His production, his touchdowns, his touches, his carries, his receiving, it's all there. And he's just been out there on the field. He's missed part of a couple of seasons, but for the most part, he's been there when he's needed to be there. For the most part, his production is there. So he's got that to point to, and that he is, if not the best running back in the NFL, certainly one of them. But I think most people would call him the best running back in the NFL, all things considered. Secondly, the Steelers are wearing him out. Over the past couple of seasons, I want you to look at a couple of statistics. In 2014, he carried the ball 290 times. He had 83 catches. He missed quite a bit of time the next year, but in 2016, he had 216 touches just on the ground, in addition to 75 catches. That was in 12 games. Also, last year, he had over 300 carries on the ground, in addition to 85 catches. So the Steelers, and rightfully so, the Steelers are using him up in every way they can. They want this guy to have the football. He's the focal point of their offense. You can talk about Tony Brown all you want to, who's an amazing guy. This guy is the focal point of their offense, aside from Ben Roethlisberger. He's the guy who's really producing the mass numbers, just the massive numbers. But they're wearing him out. And if you're Le'Veon Bell and you're a running back and they are wearing you out like this, you know that you're only going to have so much time playing in the NFL. Your career is getting shorter with every time you touch the football. So last year he had 85 catches, not to mention over 300 touches on the ground. That is a tremendous number of hits that he's taking. That's a lot of pressure on his knees. That's just a lot of wear and tear on a player, period, but especially for a running back. Now, if you're Le'Veon Bell, another reason why he needs to keep insisting on this contract is running back value. He knows that for the next season, his cap number is about $14 million. That is the franchise tag that they put on him. That means that he is making the average of the top 5 running backs in the NFL. So in his mind, and rightfully so, if the average of the top 5 running backs is $14 million, he should be making more than that in the upcoming seasons for a long-term contract. In his mind, he should be making, because he's better than those guys, he should be making more than those guys. And who's to say any different if he can continue producing at that level? In his mind, he should be paid not just the equal to the average of those top 5 running backs. He should be making more than those guys, and by a good bit. So that's why he's frustrated. Also, playing running back, you know that one knee injury and you're done. And he would like to have some kind of real guarantees over the next 3, 4, 5 seasons, however long he wants to play. He'd like to have some guarantees about that. If he does take an injury pop, he can still get paid, still have time to rehab, still have time to come back, and still be making top money. That's what he's hoping for. And listen, if I was his agent, I would not let him play another down until he got some kind of a big-term contract, because if they let him, the Steelers will let him play out the string under the franchise tag this year and the franchise tag probably next year as well. He won't be getting any kind of guarantees beyond the current season. that he's under. If you're a running back, you already know that your career tends to be very short. Even if it's very long, teams just don't want to give you that kind of money over a long-term period. If you get one injury, all that money just goes straight out the window. So for Le'Veon Bell, he's getting a lot of flack, a lot of criticism. Listen, he doesn't owe the Steelers anything. He doesn't owe the fans anything. He doesn't owe the other players anything. Le'Veon Bell needs to do what's best for Le'Veon Bell, and that is not get on the field until he's got some kind of a contract. You might say, well, being off the field for the next year, if he holds out for the next year, would hurt him. Of course it would. It's tougher to stay in playing shape when you're not playing. Of course it is. But we've seen guys who have sat out a year due to injury and rehab and still come back strong and fresh. In some cases, even fresher than they were when they left. They just had a year to rest and rehab and get off. Le'Veon Bell wouldn't be doing it for injury. He would be doing it simply for holdout purposes, and certainly that's his right to do so. Now let's look at the Steelers. Why shouldn't they sign him to this long-term contract? First of all, the Steelers are in win-now mode. They are one of the teams in the NFL who is under extreme pressure to win now, because that window for them getting to compete for Super Bowls is quickly closing. They are getting very dangerously close to having to hit the reset button on the entire thing. Why do you say that, Ben? Because Ben Roethlisberger has been telling us for the past couple of off seasons that he's thinking about retiring, that he's thinking about packing it all in, that he's thinking about not playing anymore. And yet he keeps coming back. But we know that the end is not too far away for Ben Roethlisberger, because he keeps telling us that. So as soon as Ben Roethlisberger retires, the Steelers are going to have to hit the reset button. Now, why would that keep them from wanting to give money to Le'Veon Bell? Because if Le'Veon Bell is asking for $14 to $17 million, we don't really know what he's asking for. He's not really telling us. But if he's asking for $14 to $17 million a season, that's a ton of money that could be going to somebody else. Now, I said, well, they're giving that in a franchise tag anyway, yeah, but it's not guaranteed, and it's not for a long term. They would like to be able to have the option over the next couple of seasons to not be tied in to Le'Veon Bell. If Roethlisberger plays for another 3 seasons and they decide that they don't want to franchise Le'Veon Bell, they can let him go and they can use that money for somebody else. If Le'Veon Bell is asking for $17 million a year, of course the Steelers just aren't going to want to give that up. They're already paying a ton of money to Roethlisberger, a ton of money to Antonio Brown, paying a ton of money to Le'Veon Bell, even though they are doing it under the franchise tag. If they're paying more than that $14 million, boy, the price tag is just really starting to exclude them getting any other kind of players of value on that team. It's already tough enough to win under the salary cap. The Steelers are in win-now mode. They really just don't want to hand out that long-term contract to Le'Veon Bell because it interferes with their ability to get other players from other places. It really interferes with their flexibility, their cap flexibility. They'd much rather only be under an obligation for 1 season than a number of seasons. And the second reason is he's wearing out, and they know it. Even though his production isn't necessarily down, his average yards per carry were down last year to a flat 4. Running backs who typically carry the ball over 300 times in a season, the next year, the next couple of seasons, their production tends to fall off historically. The Steelers know that. Le'Veon Bell knows that. And so they're just not going to want to give him a 3 or 4 or 5 year contract at a $14 to $17 million cap hit. They're just not going to do that because they know he's a running back, he's wearing down. In spite of his tremendous production, not only catching the ball out of the backfield, but running the ball out of the backfield, in spite of that, they're just not going to want to give that to him because he is wearing out. All the numbers that they're putting on the past few years. Then too, just the running back position and period. It just, in today's game, it just doesn't have as big of an impact as other positions, specifically quarterback, defensive end, cornerback, defensive tackle even at times, a good edge rusher from the outside linebacker spot, maybe even a wide receiver, left tackle. There's a number of positions that just require more money because they have a bigger impact on today's game, and you just can't get around that. If you're the Steelers, you know that you're paying a $14 million cap hit for the upcoming season, but to give that out long-term to a running back, you just don't want to do that. If I were the Steelers, I wouldn't do that, except under one condition. Here's the only condition under which if I were the Steelers, that I would want to hand Le'Veon Bell this money. If you know that Roethlisberger's leaving in a year or two, you're blowing everything up anyway. You're probably, if you're not in win now mode, you're starting over with a brand new rookie quarterback or somebody else that you've just brought in to kind of bridge the gap between you and your next good rookie quarterback, and you know that your defense and everything is having to hit the whole reset button, then why not have Le'Veon Bell be there to just kind of see you through those years? If you know you're not going to win anyway, why not keep some goodwill with the fans, keep Le'Veon Bell on the field? He'll still bring people into the stadium. He'll still keep you decent, keep you from being embarrassed. He'll still give you some solidarity and some stability for the Steelers. So if you know that after this season or the next season, you're just not going to win anyway because it's going to take time to rebuild everything, and make no mistake about it, that's what the Steelers are going to have to do as soon as Ben Roethlisberger retires. They're going to have to rebuild everything. If you know that's the case, then why not just go ahead and keep Le'Veon Bell on for 4 or 5 seasons? Let him produce. It would help no matter who's at quarterback, no matter who's at the offensive line spot, no matter who else is on the team. At least you would have some stability. You would have somebody that the fans love, that the fans recognize. In that case, I would be willing to keep Le'Veon Bell, but not for any winning purposes. You know that if you sign him to a long-term contract because it's a running back spot, you know that you've pretty much decided that you're not going to be winning much over the next 4 or 5 years past the time that Ben Roethlisberger retires. Now, the all-important question, who's got the leverage? In any contract negotiations, I hear people all the time talk about what's right, what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do. That was the wrong thing to do. The only important question in contract negotiations is who's got the leverage. In most cases in the NFL, when a player is under the franchise tag or the 5th-year option and he wants a new contract, he has no leverage. He has none. He has almost no leverage at all. People have been saying that about Le'Veon Bell. Every article you read just about indicates that Le'Veon Bell has no leverage in this situation, but he does. And here's where the leverage is. It's not a lot, but it's something. Here's the leverage. The Steelers are in win now mode. They know without Le'Veon Bell, they're not going to be winning much of anything over the next season or two. The way the team is built, with Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown, the players they've got on that team, if Le'Veon Bell isn't on that field producing for that team the way it's currently constructed, they're going to have a very difficult time winning anything. It's going to be a challenge to win the division. It's going to be a challenge to make the playoffs. It's going to be an even bigger challenge to beat some of those teams that are stacking up in the AFC in the playoffs. Forget going to the Super Bowl. If Le'Veon Bell isn't there for most of the season and for the playoffs, forget winning anything. You're going to struggle to even make the playoffs. And the Steelers know that. And Le'Veon Bell knows that, and his agent knows that. Now, Le'Veon Bell has gotten very frustrated over the past few weeks as he's trying to produce this. Le'Veon Bell has gotten very frustrated as he's trying to generate this new contract. The Steelers don't want to give it to him. They just want to use him under the franchise tag this year, reevaluate next year, maybe franchise him again, and then probably say goodbye. That's the way the Steelers would like to play this out as they watch the end of the Roethlisberger era coming to a close. Hopefully make 1 or 2 more runs at the Super Bowl. But for Le'Veon Bell, his leverage is that he knows the Steelers are under great pressure to win right now, and they can't do it without Le'Veon Bell on the field. There's no other running back they would be able to get at this point unless they just got lucky in the draft and hit somebody there. There's no other running back that would be able to get at this point that would fuel that offense the way Le'Veon Bell does. And the Steelers know it, and Le'Veon Bell knows it. So that is Bell's leverage. If he says he's not coming into camp, if he says he's not going to play for the Steelers next season, if he says he's going to retire, if he says he's just not going to play for the next year, the Steelers are in huge trouble. They're just not going to be able to compete at any kind of a high level at all, even with Roethlisberger and Brown on the lineup. So that's Bell's leverage. It's not a lot of leverage. The Steelers still hold most of the cards, but Le'Veon Bell does have leverage in this situation, and that is it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate all the views, the subscriptions, the comments, good or bad. Keep them coming. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Sports and Money. I'm Ben Parker. Thank you.